Welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and another one of Horton's scenarios. Actually, I'm really starting to rattle through these. If I'm not careful, I'll run out of them before too long. The links to the Discord and the ModDB will be in the description below, of course, and also the timestamp for the battle starting, because there are, I think, three things that I want to talk about before we get into the army compositions and then the battle. The first of which is that due to the fact that I now have got like part-time employment in addition to my university stuff, while I have recently been able to get a video out every 2 days, that might be difficult from here on out. It might have to be every 3 days from now on, which is a bit of a shame because I do enjoy doing these, but nonetheless it is kind of necessary at this point. Maybe I can still do 2 a day, but I would need to record in bulk on either Mondays or Tuesdays, so we'll see how that works out. But if you see a video every 3 days instead of every 2 days, that will be why. The second thing is the reshade settings that I'm using have been changed a little bit, mainly because I was noticing a little bit of chop when I was using just Sweet FX, and also the fact that it looked really good but only in certain light. There was some real problems with the lighting. Sometimes it would either be too dark, or as the last replay I showed proved, too bright with that sand. So I am changing it to be a little bit more compression friendly, I think. And the third thing was, I think I've completely forgotten about that. Never mind, I'm sure it wasn't that important anyway. If it was, then I'll just mention it later on in the battle if I suddenly remember. But we'll go through the army compositions now. And we'll start off with Donald. This is on the map Goblin Town, by the way, as I'm sure you've noticed from the map. There's the big sort of central sort of spire where Goblin Town resides underneath, and there are a few ways in. There are 3 attackers and I believe 3 defenders, and one of the attackers is Donald Kingslayer playing as Lothlorien. Again, I think probably the least powerful of the elves at the moment, but they are still very, very strong if used correctly, as I've learnt to my dismay in the past, which is a battle I think I might actually show next, just to prove how good Lothlorien can be. I don't know if there'll be sort of match winners here, but we have some Sylvan Heavy Archers, 3 units of them I believe, and in behind there we have a unit of Elder Council. Again, a very good Javelin unit, but not as good as, I believe, the Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen or the Demons of the Desert. They lack a little something next to them. And then we have the Galadrim Veteran Warriors, of course, the grossly incandescent archers themselves. My favourite Lothlorien unit by quite a long way, it must be said. Then we've got a couple of units of Woodland Warriors, quite cheap actually, only 400 florins each, and they're pretty good for what they offer. They do die pretty quickly if unsupported, but still, usually you can support them pretty easily. We of course have the Sindar Blade Masters, not armour piercing, but very, very skillful infantry, very fast as well. So you'll be able to cover a lot of ground with these guys very, very quickly. And then over here we have the Sylvan Heavy Swordsman, upgraded armour of course on most of these units because they've got the blue capes instead of the green. Again, like most elven sort of two-hander swordsman units, they aren't armour piercing, but again they offer a decent amount of armour for the Lothlorien elves, which usually go without it. And yeah, I think that they are a very strong unit, albeit, you know, I suppose in terms of aggression, Lothlorien do struggle with brute force a little more than the other two. We also have some Galadrim Veteran Riders over here. You don't see these guys, well, at least I haven't seen these guys too much, you know, because horse archers at the moment are a little bit micro-intensive and they don't really pay for themselves too easily, so people tend to just leave them out. But they are still nonetheless a very, very good horse archer unit. And then over here we have some Sylvan Axemen, of course, with the upgraded look, and they are one of the most significant units that Lothlorien can field because they are an armour-piercing infantry unit. They are mainline. It's something that the other 2 elves really don't have in abundance, and these guys do, if you don't count, of course, their archers. But the Sylvan Axemen are very, very good, particularly against heavily armoured factions like the Dwarves, and I believe the Misty Mountains are 3 armies on the defence. They should be very effective in this battle if that's the case. And then over here we have the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, not quite as good as the Elder Enway or the Hiran Egg, but they are still very good, and you can have 3 before the cost increases usually, but again, this is the scenario, so you get assigned your armies. And then at the front here we have, I believe, just a single unit of Sylvan Silver Spears. So that is the entirety of the Lothlorien army. Now let's move on to another one of the attacking armies. And we have Brainy Smurf playing as the Dwarves, and we have at the front here a couple of units of Khazad Orc Hunters, a cool looking unit. They pull out dual axes in melee, they're archers. Not a particularly fantastic archer though, it must be said. Like, they are very easily beaten by a lot of other archers, but then they do offer the Dwarves a nice long range alternative to their very deadly crossbows. Then moving on over here we have the Ironfoot Warriors, of course, the best mainline infantry unit in the game at the moment, I believe. Very strong, very good at mass pushes, armour piercing, all the things you want. And then over here we have the Ironfoot Halberdiers, again a very strong halberd unit, mainline. Not quite as good as the Edelond units, but they are a little cheaper, I think, and they aren't that much worse. So this is something that the dwarves certainly have. It's certainly a unit you'd want to bring as them. Then over here we have the Ironfoot Spearmen again. Even more mass on the spears than on the warriors, because that's what the spears have in their favour. So they are very good at putting at the front of a mass push, especially in shield wall. There's another unit of halberds down there, and then back here we get in some of the more serious units like the Eriador infantry, 2 hit points and armour piercing. Then back here we have just Khazad warriors, again basically the same thing as Ironfoot warriors. The difference in stats between them is very negligible. And then over here we have more Khazad warriors. Those are the Ironfoot guard. This is a significant unit, of course, not armour piercing, but still 2 hit points. Very tough unit indeed. And if we move back here, we do have some Ironfoot crossbows, as you would expect from the dwarves. The Blacklock engineers, not a lot of ammunition, and again, I think that the heavy ammunition units, other than the troll slayers, because you can have 2, are not really worth it at the moment, because regular crossbows just seem to have so much more ammunition and can do so much more damage. The Blacklock engineers at the moment don't have too much of a purpose, in my opinion, but hopefully in the next patch the units that have sort of really heavyweight ammunition will be given their purpose back a little bit, because I do like the idea, and the Blacklock engineers potentially the mini ballista that they are. Then we have some Axemen of Erebor, of course, classic unit, classic armour piercing. Then over here we have what I assume is the general's unit. Yep, no, actually no, it isn't. We have the Mithril Guard, so they aren't the general's units. They'll be able to use be able to be used a little more freely. And then we have the Sons of the Fallen and the Sons of Durin, so the dwarves have got a very elite force. And then back here we have the general's unit, the Dwarven Nobles. They've got a very strong force, the dwarves. The defenders are going to have to really try and bottle them in, and if they have crossbows, which I assume they do because they're the Misty Mountains, they will have to really try and bottle them up and focus down the dwarves more than anything. It's going to be very, very tricky for the Misty Mountains to do that, though, I think. Meanwhile, over here we have some Banderbrass archers from the Free Peoples of Eriador, and Orange Firedon is commanding them. And over here we have some Bree Militia. In the match I showed by Eriador and last, they performed very well under the command of Stewed Fungus with their aggressive push alongside Lothlorien, so that was a winning combination last time. We have the Cardalan Footmen, a pike unit. Again, something that the other 2 factions are lacking, although Lothlorien will be getting a pike unit next patch, I believe, whenever that may be. The next patch really does need to come out. I think some new life needs to be injected into the game. And then we have some Forest Shell heavy swords, a decent sort of heavily armoured infantry unit. They're not quite as good as something like the Arthur Dane man-at-arms, but they are still very dependable. Then some Dunedain Rangers. So yeah, again, Eriador pretty archer heavy. Their infantry is lacking a little something, especially next to their allies. We have some Forest Shell heavy spearmen. We have some Forest Shell heavy archers. And then more Forest Shell heavy archers and more heavy spearmen. Back here we have some battle-ready Dunedain. They could be potentially pretty good if you can get them into the mix. Then back here we have the Cardalan Elders. I haven't shown these guys off an awful lot. They don't look like anything too special, but they are multiple hit point archers. They don't have armour-piercing ammunition, I don't believe, but they are still pretty good. They're not bad in melee either. I've seen them hold off a unit of dismounted, well, 2 units of dismounted Royal Guard of Rohan all on their lonesome. So, you know, not a bad unit at all. And then back here we have some Forest Shell Gatekeepers. Of course, definitely the strongest unit Eriador have to offer. They can pretty much stonewall a cavalry faction all on their own if you adopt a defensive posture. And then we have a Forest Shell Heavy Swords unit, and more Forest Shell Heavy Swords. And then back here I believe this is the Cardalan Royal Guard. They're not actually as good as you might expect, but, you know, they still get the job done. And then over here what I believe is the general unit is the Forest Shell Captains, of course. Very similar to the Haven Guard and Sons of Argonath. Not quite as good, but the same sort of thing. So now let's go through the defenders. The defenders are likely to be all mixed together, so you're going to have to bear with me here. There's also probably some hidden units in here from the defenders. So we have Tundra's Fox playing as one of the Misty Mountains armies. He seems to play the Misty Mountains an awful lot. We have the Mountain Uruk Archers. You know, an Orc Archer unit has a lot of volume in terms of shots they can fire, but in terms of quality, really only the Moran-on bows can boast being super deadly. Then over here from Char, or Charmander, I believe his name on the Discord is, we have some heavy Goblin infantry again. Decent armour on these guys, so they will survive longer than most standard Orc units, but unfortunately they are up against the Dwarves and Lothlorien and Eriador, all of which have got some very potent anti-armour units, so the heavy Goblin infantry might be a little less effective than they would like. We have some more heavy Goblin infantry. Then over here, what do we have? Some more Mountain Uruk Archers, and then over here we have what could potentially be a pretty good holding unit in the heavy Goblin Spears because of their anti-armour capabilities, and of course Spearmen having a bit higher mass. They might be needed to help against the Dwarves in particular. Oh, that's a little weird. Where am I? Hello? Ah, here we go. So we have some Mountain Uruk blades and some more Mountain Uruk blades, so slightly better than the heavy goblin infantry, particularly on the attack, it must be said. Again, more of charge units over here. We have some Black Uruk warband, more of the same thing to be honest. The Black Uruk warband, the heavy goblin infantry and the Mountain Uruk blades all fill the same role, more or less, of a sort of sword and board unit. Not particularly high quality, but they will still get the job done. And then over here we have some cave trolls. They're going to need to avoid the sort of heavy attack units of the dwarves and try and go for something a little softer. Maybe Eriador would be a good foe for them to go after. Orc bodyguards, I assume this is Charge General. Again, the Orc General, I believe this is him. It's the one without a helmet, so he tends to blend in quite a lot. But yes, his Orc bodyguard are going to be facing off against the dwarves. Heavy goblin crossbowmen are going to be absolutely crucial. They need to get into a very good firing position and fire down on the dwarven approach, particularly those elite units, because the heavy goblins are not really going to have much. I assume somewhere around here the blackback berserkers are lying in wait. Heavy goblin spears as well, and the blackback berserkers are going to be crucial as well. All of the Misty Mountains high tier units, they aren't very many in number, but they can swing this. They are quite savage. We have some more heavy goblin infantry, more heavy goblin halberdiers. Heavy goblin halberdiers actually are going to be very, very good at holding the line as well. Some heavy goblin archers watching over the dwarven approach, and then over here we have some heavy goblin infantry, halberdiers, and more infantry. So that's all of Char's forces pretty much, I believe. If we go back over here, we have more of Tundra's Fox's army here in the middle. We have some heavy goblin spearmen. We have some Black Uruk warband. Is that his? Yeah. Just want to make sure I'm not going into the other army. Black Uruks of the mountains again could be a potentially useful unit against the heavily armoured dwarves. Once again, I'm going into the ceiling. That's going to be a bit of a problem here. Heavy goblin spears. Again, I'm going through the army composition a little bit more slowly because I don't want to miss much. And then over here we have the Orc bodyguards. Heavy goblin crossbowmen, again, going to be very important. Mountain Uruk blades. Mountain Uruk pikes, again very good at holding the line. More Mountain Uruk archers, more Mountain Uruk blades, and more Mountain Uruk pikes. So meanwhile, watching the northern approach against Lothlorien, we have Flavemore, and he is going to be deploying his heavy goblin crossbows, his Orc bodyguards, Mountain Uruk pikes, snow trolls, heavy goblin infantry, Mountain Uruk blades, of course. Then we have some more heavy goblin infantry. He has the Blackwatch Legion, you know, and against Lothlorien that could be very, very useful with how good they are against archer fire. We have heavy goblin halberdiers, Mountain Uruk blades. Of course, the armor piercing units won't be as good against Lothlorien like the Black Uruks of the mountains, but they are still pretty decent nonetheless. Oh, misclick. And then a heavy goblin infantry unit up here, heavy goblin archers, more Blackwatch Legion, and down here we have some more heavy goblin infantry, and I believe that is it. So without further ado, let us begin. And in fact, it might be a good idea to start off over here in this defensive position, because I think the dwarves are going to be able to make it to their quarry the first. Yes, they are. They're already shooting down onto those heavy goblin infantry units, which is amazing. The dwarves are the slow ones usually. Again, this is a 56,000 frame battle, so it's going to be quite long. Again, the Khazad Orc Hunters are firing into these heavy goblin infantry. Not really the best use of their time. Shielded and heavily armoured units are going to stand up to the ammunition just that little bit better. As we can see, the Orcs are just sort of pulling back their defensive line, which is a good move, I think. Make it a little bit more compact. Otherwise, the dwarves are just going to be able to punch through in several places. So yeah, you can see that the archer fire, the Khazad Orc Hunters have got decent range, better range than the heavy goblin archers have, certainly. But even so, they should definitely be going for the halberdiers and not the infantry. The halberdiers are definitely more of a threat to their advance than the standard heavy goblin infantry. They won't get many kills at all. I'll be interested to see how they stop the dwarves, because that dwarven army is pretty scary. It's got a lot of very high tier, high profile units, which the Misty Mountains mainline units will really struggle to stop. Short of their blackback berserkers and their crossbows, there's really nothing they can do to stop them just crushing their way through the army. But we shall see. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look over at Eriador, shall we? Over the hill. You can see that he had some bandits hidden. Not really the most scary thing to see coming for the Misty Mountains defenders. Definitely a goblin themed map though, so it's good to see the Misty Mountains defending their home. Yeah, the bandits are going in first, it looks like, presumably to try and soak up some of that mountain orc archer fire. But again, I don't think Tundra's Fox will fall for that bait Even Misty Mountains infantry units will be able to handily beat bandits as long as they're in formation. Bandits just have too lightly armoured. They can potentially be very good if you push very aggressively with a lot of them, as we've seen with Eriador in the past, but in this situation, sending them forward on their own is likely to just get them slaughtered, although... Oh, how lovely. Work with me, Goblin Town, please. There we go. That's going to be a real pain. But they are actually using their archers to fire at them. Although only one volley or two volleys, so it's not really all that important. Here come the bandits. They're immediately going to be greeted by heavy goblin infantry. And the heavy goblins should be sufficient to deal with these lads. In fact, the bandits are now retreating, seeing that the archers are not interested in them. So a bit of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, let's go back over to here, shall we? We can see that the Galadrim veteran warriors are... Hang on, where are they? There's only 4 of them. Oh, they're over there. Oh, they're getting shredded. Yeah, being sent forward on their own. Not really the best idea. You know, it's only standard heavy goblin archers that are shooting them and they're melting them. So this is a very good trade for the Misty Mountains. Again, it's a bit difficult to know what to do with horse archers in this situation, though, because it's really very fortified defensive positions that they've got. There's no way you can really get in behind and start really harassing their line effectively. Particularly not against a faction which traditionally does quite well under archer fire. The Misty Mountains main line and their Blackwatch Legion provide them quite a lot of cover. But yeah, these guys, they're still firing. They're very accurate, of course, but still they lost quite a few on that approach. Interesting. So again, it'll be interesting to see how Lothlorien handle this. Meanwhile, down here we can see really just one unit of heavy goblin archers have been left out here. And this being the case, I'm surprised that the dwarves aren't sort of rushing to meet them in melee, because at this point they're just kind of using their ammunition on a unit that has clearly been left for dead. And again, the heavy goblin archers are not really the biggest threat anyway. They're not very accurate. Don't have the highest ammunition, don't have the highest damage. Definitely a very strong example of a low tier unit that the Misty Mountains have. And again, the Misty Mountains I think are looked down upon a little bit. Wrongly so, I think. I think the Misty Mountains do have some decent options. They're not as good as Gundabad or Mordor or Isengard really, so they are probably the lowest of the orc factions as it stands, but even so I think that the options they do have available to them, stuff like the Blackback Berserkers and the Blackwatch Legion in particular, the Blackwatch Legion elevate them. Just going to get a quick screenshot there of the Khazad Orc Hunters. Again, I do like the look of these guys, but you don't see them an awful lot because there's really no point of bringing them over the crossbows. I do think the crossbows need a bit of an ammunition nerf because at the moment they can do such a high amount of damage with no real... You know, the range is a drawback, but only against certain factions. Mainly against stuff like the Eldarenway Archers, which need to be changed as well, of course. So here we have the Sylvan Axemen rushing forth. So this is going to be interesting. How will the heavy goblins answer this? Because this is a very difficult unit for the Misty Mountains to take on. They're not very well armoured, so their armour-piercing units are not going to do very well against them, and they have armour-piercing weapons themselves. They are firing as much archer ammunition from their low-tier archers into them as they can, but they are shielded, and from the front they have a lot of defence, so it's going to be difficult. But it does look like Lothlorien is going to choose this avenue of attack. And at the moment that's wise because they've only got heavy goblin archers and heavy goblin infantry up here, and heavy goblin infantry will be ripped asunder by Sylvan Axemen. Sylvan Axemen definitely, as a mainline unit, is one of my favourites, just because it gives Lothlorien something that I think the other elves just don't have. And I do hope that that continues. So here we are, finally the melee fight is beginning. It looks like it's beginning down on the south as well with Eriador. But yeah, balance of forces is evenly matched. Now defeat seems certain. Now that the axes are really starting to bite down on these heavy goblins. They are not long for this world. We can see that another unit of heavy goblin infantry is being committed. The one saving grace here is that because Lothlorien don't have much melee armour themselves, the heavy goblin infantry will do more damage than they would to, say, like Dwarven infantry, but that's still not going to be much because they're going to die so quickly. So yeah, this is going to be real unfortunate. You can see that they are really starting to push back as well. Fortunately, the Blackwatch Legion are on their way over here, and that will halt the advance somewhat, and it will also negate the archer support that Lothlorien have over here a little bit. Meanwhile, if we go back down to the south, we can see that we have some hobbitry at arms, and the bandits are both going up against the underground goblins, so that was a hidden unit. Now, the underground goblins are, of course, not great. They're better than the free units that the orcs get, so for example, the goblin infantry, they're a bit better than them in terms of stats and the fact they can hide anywhere. But even so, in a sustained fight like this, I mean, victory seems certain, but as the hobbitry and arms get down here, I think they will be overwhelmed if they are allowed to stay here on their own. Again, though, this is just trading their trash units at the moment, so it's not really a victory for either side, really, because it's just a probing assault from Eriador. Meanwhile, if we look over here, we see that the dwarves are now committing their melee units, and they are going to squash those heavy goblin archers. Are they going to get another volley off? They are, but of course the dwarven units, as heavily armoured as they get, with shields, it's going to do virtually nothing to them. So if we look here, the Ironfoot warriors, I mean, some close range shots will do a little bit of damage for them later on. Some of them might get a little bloody. The heavy goblin archers genuinely stand absolutely no chance. I'm surprised they didn't get pulled back. Some missile units like this in the late game could have been very useful, shooting into the backs of certain units if it came down to it. But they were left out here somewhat, so a bit of a mistake from the defenders, and of course defensive mistakes are often multiplied tenfold in the late game. So we shall see. Meanwhile, over here we can see the Blackwatch Legion's arrival has completely turned this fight around. The Blackwatch Legion are such a good unit, and they've managed to push back against the Sylvan Axemen. And Lothlorien, they do have some units now on station. The Sylvan Heavy Archers that are out of ammunition are running in, but you know, again, it does seem that they advanced the Sylvan Axemen feeling very confident. But quickly the fight turned around and they found themselves without really units to reinforce them. So Flaithmoor's position is going to hold for a little longer. The Blackwatch Legion will hold up here, backed up by this heavy goblin infantry. There's a unit of 9 in there somewhere. So yeah, this is going to be... Again, they've got more Sylvan Axemen coming up as well, and they've got Woodland Warriors. So Donald Kingslayer is really committing pretty hard over here now. But yes, we have the Misty Mountains holding firm upon this ridge, and this is the problem that the attackers are going to have at this point. Really, what you want to do as the attackers is you want to attack in as wide an avenue as possible, although when you're facing the orcs that becomes a little less clear, especially when you're the elves. But going down this one very thin ridge line, really, could that be a bit of a mistake, particularly while the Blackwatch Legion are here? I mean, that is a lot of elves. They are going to push through here eventually. Victory now does seem certain. And the Blackwatch Legion is starting to fall pretty quickly, so maybe this is a good move, but they are also taking quite a lot of skirmish fire. They're going to take some attritional casualties doing this, but it's not often you see the elves really blobbing up and pushing in this manner. The Sylvan Silver Spears there backing up the attack. Do they have anything else? The rest of their army is just sort of waiting back there. Aside from this unit over here, the Sindar Archers. So they're sending forward the Sindar Archers. So they're using up all of their archers. These Galadriel veteran riders are taking a beating again. Again, not the worst unit they could use again, because they could lose again, I should say, because obviously they're not going to be able to use it to huge effect in the later game. If we look here, they've taken some casualties on the front line from these halberdiers. These heavy goblin crossbowmen, again, this is the unit that you really want to be focusing down. Less so the archers and more the crossbows. If you're the Lothlorien elves and you have these guys in range, you want to get rid of them. If you get rid of the Misty Mountains crossbows, I don't see how they can win this fight. If you leave them there and they manage to get a good position in the later game, this battle's anyone's. We shall see. I'm kind of rooting for the orcs on this one, because I do think that they're facing down a force which is, well, maybe they're not numerically superior, but at least numerically even, but the quality gap between the elves, dwarves and the goblins is pretty huge. You can see over here that the elves really now starting to make a big push. The Blackwatch Legion, only 46 of them left. This unit of heavy goblin infantry has sort of been committed to just try and shore up the defences over here. And again, the elves might, the elves have really committed on this front and they want to push through. And then I suppose when they're attacking the goblin position from the side, that's when they'll commit the rest of their army to the front and try and destroy them. Here comes the other unit of Blackwatch Legion though. So Flavemore is eager to stop this Elven advance in its tracks. Again, if these guys aren't in shield wall, they really should be, because the Blackwatch Legion performs so strongly when they're in shield wall. We also have a unit of Black Uruks of the Mountains coming in here. So some pretty decent units being committed alongside some more trash tier units to really do some damage. I mean, you can see the elves going flying and the Blackwatch Legion pushing into this Lothlorien advance. Victory still seems certain for them. They're going to take a lot of casualties, and what's going to be left of their army, because really Lothlorien do need to break through over here. They've probably been given the hardest challenge because the defensive position over here that the goblins occupied was very strong. We shall see. Again, it looks like they broke down here on the southern flank. The bandits and the hobbitry at arms completely gone, as well as the underground goblins, it looks like. But now we've got Breland Militia moving up as the second wave, but they're not really making many inroads over here. I mean, the underground goblins are gone, but that's not really the most important unit in the field. So we can see this fight over here is still progressing as it will. Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen are being committed over here to try and reinforce. If we look over here, the Sindar Archers still firing away. Are they going for the crossbows? That's what I want to know. Yes, they are. Where are the crossbowmen now? Because I can see a lot of dead crossbows. And with the Elven Archers, they will melt in seconds. There they are, 56 of them left, and rightly so, they just need to get these guys back. In fact, I would suggest they should just retreat them fully into the settlement, if they're allowed to, of course. I don't know the rules. Maybe Flavemore has to completely commit until Lothlorien is either dead or he is. Heavy Goblin Archers now being focused down. It's not really what... I guess with Lothlorien it kind of is because of their lack of armour. If it was the dwarves, then you can just safely kind of ignore them. Meanwhile, if we look over here, you can see that these Blackwatch Legionnaires, or are they 57 of them, they've already been cut down to size, really. Armour-piercing melee does do a lot of damage to them. Question is, how much damage is this doing to Lothlorien's infantry? Again, there's a bit of fire coming in here. There's a few of the Blackwatch Legionnaires which kind of push through in the initial advance, are still alive, sort of surrounded on all sides. It is sort of making it difficult for the elves to reinforce. They're bringing up more woodland warriors, and the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen are in melee, but it's making it awkward for the elves to advance. And I guess that is all that Flavemore can ask to do. Meanwhile, the underground goblins have been revealed. Again, I think they were sort of pouncing, trying to get into the Sindar Archers in melee, but unfortunately the Galadrian veteran riders charged them down. So that's unfortunate for Flavemore. Good idea, but unfortunately the cavalry was present. And now the archers are going to go for their halberdiers, their main line. Victory is a distinct possibility for the underground goblins, though, if they stay in melee. Weirdly enough, because there's so few of the veteran riders left alive. This is where all the action is happening at the moment, though. The dwarves have yet to really begin their advance, and I assume they're waiting for the outcome of these battles over here before they really commit. Try and stretch the enemy. The Black Uruks are in here. Lothlorien are winning this fight over here, but now the archers are going for the woodland warriors, a very, very vulnerable unit. You can see even heavy goblin archers, every volley is going to kill a good 10 or so. So again, at that point it's just worth trying to commit them to melee, because otherwise they're just going to die back there to archers. As we can see over here, the Blackwatch Legionnaires are largely spent, which means it's really down to the Black Uruks to be the meat in this defence now. The heavy goblin infantry are just there to be sort of chaff, thrown in the way. But yes, Lothlorien I believe will be victorious up here, but what they'll have left is debatable. I think that the attackers will win this, but I think that will be down to the sheer brute force that the dwarves are going to be able to bring to bear. And the fact that they aren't going to have any reinforcements from the goblins up here, because Lothlorien will have finished them off. And this was the hardest position to take, I think. I think the other positions, when the dwarves and Eriador get their crossbows in, the defenders are going to have a real hard time. You can see just going down here, Sylvan Silver Spears are now on the front lines, along with the heavy archers and the Sylvan Axemen. The Woodland Warriors are at the back. Defeat is a certainty. Balance of forces is evenly matched. So again, it's kind of... They are bringing up another unit of Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen though, so it's really just a matter of attrition or casualties. How well can Flavemore's army do? Let's not forget as well that the Lothlorien elves do have a force down here of Sylvan Heavy Spearmen and more Swordsmen. They also have their Sindar Blade Masters and their Galadriel Veteran Warriors. We'll see. We'll see how balanced this ends up being. Heavy Goblin Infantry. Again, there's not really much that lower tier orcs can do against this sort of pressure. But they are now sending over some Mountain Uruk Pikes and Underground Goblins to hold this position. I mean, Flavemore, this is correct of him because at this point he's committed so much over here that he needs to hold it to make it worth it. If they break through, it's going to be all over. We can see here the Underground Goblins not going to do much, but once again they're just going to throw some chaff in the way. The Pikemen, however, will do a good job. They should anyway, provided Flavemore gets them into Spear Wall and gets them covering the whole choke point, because of course Pikes don't have very high attack, and against armoured units they kill extremely slowly, but of course Lothlorien are not very well armoured. So the Pikes should get some more kills over here, and at the very least they will at least halt Lothlorien's progress a little more. Meanwhile the Dwarves are finally moving. Very slowly, as the Dwarves are wont to do. We have these Ironfoot Warriors creeping towards that Halberdier line. I've had the Heavy Goblin Halberdiers perform very well against the Dwarves in the past, and they're going to need to if the defenders have a chance here. Again, they're in shield wall, so they're going to need to commit that Heavy Goblin Infantry pretty quickly if they want to hold this line. Oh. Go on, Dwarves. Attack. You know you want to. Full assault. You can see in the background over there that the Khazad Orc Hunters are getting into position. If they still have ammunition, it's going to be bad news bears for these Halberdiers. They don't hold up too well to missiles. Breaking shield wall. At least temporarily, we have the Ironfoot Warriors getting up close and personal with these Heavy Goblin Halberds of Char Char. Char Char really drew a bit of the short straw here, having to hold back what in my opinion is the army that's probably going to be the thing that finishes them off. All of that elite Dwarven infantry, and then backing them up we have that Heavy Goblin Infantry, so that will at least make it so they can't just break through the line too easily. These Halberdiers do need to be stabilised if they're going to get their armour piercing damage down, because at the moment the Halberdiers are just being cut through. This infantry needs to get in there, form a little bit of a buffer. Meanwhile, let's have a look over here. How are things going now that the Pikes have entered combat? Excuse me. Defeat does seem certain for them. And again, I'm not too surprised about that, but the Pikes should hold a little longer. Holding a little longer is the name of the game up here. He does need to be careful though. He does need to get some kills on these units. He needs to make it so that Lothlorien is largely blunted before they go into the settlement. And he does have the ability to do that, I think. He still has his Orc Bodyguard, he still has his Snow Trolls. He still has a pretty depleted unit of crossbows, admittedly. But if he was able to, I think he should really retreat his crossbows to what the town centre essentially is. That's where they will be most useful. You can see that I saw an Underground Goblin kill a Sylvan Heavy Archer. Good for him. These Pikes, now that they are down, are going to make life pretty difficult for the Lothlorien elves to simply scythe through here, although on this side the Underground Goblins are very, very vulnerable. We now have some Sylvan Heavy Spearmen being committed over here, so Donald Kingslayer is definitely committing pretty hard. This one choke point is where this northern battle will be decided, certainly. Let's go and have a look at what he's got left. I mean, he still has a healthy amount of Halberdiers. They've been largely cut down, it must be said. Routing Underground Goblins. There are the Mountain Uruk Blades. I wonder if he's got Blackback Berserkers hidden anywhere, because that could really swing this fight up here. There are his Snow Trolls. There are his crossbows. I don't think he's used his Galadriel Veteran Warrior ammunition, though, which will be worrying for him. And he's also sending up this depleted unit of Halberdiers, so there is now a gap in his defences, but I assume that he can very quickly deal with that, and then he's going to send over some Mountain Uruk Blades as well. So it's turning into a real one-front battle over there. Meanwhile, over here, it was always going to be a one-front battle in this sort of gap. Unfortunately for the Heavy Goblins, as this fight wears on, I mean, defeat does seem certain for the Ironfoot Warriors now that the Halberdiers have stabilised with the support of that infantry. The dwarves are going to need a little more. Especially now that the crossbowmen... Ooh, that's a mistake. I would not use the crossbow ammunition on these basic dwarves. Because really, you don't have much of an answer to stuff like Mithril Guard, Sons of the Fallen. I mean, crossbows were... I mean, you're going to get quite a lot of kills here on the front line to Ironfoot Warriors and Ironfoot Spears, but is it going to be worth it in the long run? I don't know. You'll keep the dwarves out of the settlement for longer, so that is something. We'll see. We'll see if that pays off in the end. I would definitely have saved the crossbow ammunition for that high-tier Dwarven unit. Those high-tier Dwarven units, though. The Halberdiers on the front line will be doing a decent amount of armor-piercing damage as well, with the infantry just adding that little bit of stability. Let's go and see what's going down on Eriador's front. Oh, I'm outside. That's not good. Here we go. But they're still not advancing. Eriador adopting a very passive approach, and looking at this I can see why. It's a very well defended section, and Eriador a little bit more lightweight than the dwarves, so they wouldn't really be able to handle it. So what they want to do is wait until either the dwarves or Lothlorien have broken in, I suppose, and then attack. Lothlorien have lost half of their soldiers at this point. The Mountaineeric pikes starting to drop pretty significantly, but now some heavy goblin halberdiers have made it to the front line. There's still missile fire coming down here into this Lothlorien blob. Lothlorien do need to be careful. They've blobbed up so severely that they are going to take so much attrition. And again, these heavy goblin archers are really low tier, but they have done a lot of work. I would say for Flavemore's army, the heavy goblin archers have actually been the best units at the moment. They've done a lot of work on the Lothlorien position. Again, the Blackwatch Legion. Lothlorien is kind of a poor matchup for them because of the armor-piercing infantry that they have, and the fact that, you know, it's not really the sort of thing... They're good at absorbing the arrow fire of Lothlorien, but when in melee, Lothlorien just have the right tools to deal with them. The pikes, the Mountaineeric blades are also in here now. The balance of forces is evenly matched. That's not the sort of thing that Donald Kingslayer really wanted to see. Those archers are getting quite a bit of friendly fire as well, though. And Lothlorien should still eventually break through on this front. It's a very slowly but surely sort of deal that they've got going on. Unfortunately for them, though, they're going to take a lot of casualties doing it. And if we look back here, the heavy goblin archers. Again, these units are both depleted. That's why they've still got ammunition. The irony of that. Heavy goblin infantry just sort of forming up. And there's some goblin infantry as well. Basic goblin infantry. And it looks like these Sylvan heavy swordsmen are going to reinforce the push. I suppose these goblin infantry are just being committed to sort of try and halt the advance. Try and prevent those reinforcements arriving on scene, because of course they are the trashiest of the trash. Goblin infantry, they're one of those units that are completely free to purchase. And they are going up against one of the finest units money can purchase, the Galadrian Veteran Warriors, although the Galadrian Veterans do have their bows out, so just the fact... No, you should commit those goblins. Yeah, there we are. So they won't be able to use their bows immediately. They will, of course, win very, very quickly. But just delaying the Lothlorien position is what you want to see. Meanwhile, it looks like the dwarves down here, according to the minimap, are really making a big push. And yeah, more and more Ironfoot Warriors are being committed. And the crossbows did retreat as well. So over here, they're just sort of doing a rearguard action, I think. Trying to kill as many of those Woodland Warriors with halberds as they can. Woodland Warriors, Ironfoot Warriors. My bad. But yeah, the dwarves are going to break through here. The heavy duty nature of their push is such that I still think the defenders are not really going to have much of a chance. But we shall see. I've seen stranger things happen in this game. And there are the Ironfoot Spears. Ironfoot Warriors are advancing. The Khazad Orc Hunters still have ammunition, I assume. Again, this is the lower tier part of the Dwarven army. Moving in here, we'll see what Jar Jar has. There are his crossbows. If he can get into position on this hill behind, that's ideal, because then he can shoot into them as they advance into the halberdiers. He's got cave trolls as well. And Black Uruk Warband. He does need to prepare to reinforce this area, though the crossbows could be the match winner over here. Meanwhile, back over to this area. Oh, the snow trolls have been committed. So once again, Flavemore very eager to keep this front alive. Sylvan Heavy Spearmen and Swordsmen should do quite well against Snow Trolls, to be honest with you, but just the fact that the Lothlorien Elves are going to take more attritional casualties over here, it's going to be a bit of a kick in the teeth for Donald Kingslayer. If we look down here, the Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen have moved up and they are firing into the Galadhrim Veteran Warriors. Very good target indeed. So just the fact that these Goblin... excuse me, just the fact that these Goblin Infantrymen are pinning these Galadhrim Veterans in place, allowing those crossbows to get some shots off, that's going to be significant, because this is Lothlorien's best unit by far, in my opinion. Don't have as much ammo as the Sindar archers, but even so. And again, this is a bit of a mistake. They should have just gone around and broken the Heavy Goblin Infantry instantly, as opposed to attacking from the front. This is just going to mean that some Sindar Blade Masters are going to get hit by bolts as well. I assume that the archers are also firing into here. These are all of the most high profile units for Lothlorien, all taking quite a lot of skirmish fire. And indeed, the Heavy Goblin position over here is moving forward. The Orc Bodyguards are also coming out to play. So they're going to try and pin these Lothlorien units in position and do as much damage to them as possible with their missiles. Good play from Flaidmore, I like it. Meanwhile over here, the Elder Council are being moved up. I mean, I worry for this Heavy Goblin position at this point. The Snow Trolls have managed to do a real number on those initial... Well, actually, those Snow Trolls have really cleaned up. My. They will still lose to the Sindar Blade Masters, I think. And the Elder Council will be able to shred through this Heavy Goblin position. So eventually they will get around. But Lothlorien have taken a lot of casualties at this point. They might even lose, which would be a real turnaround, because at one point it looked like Lothlorien were going to pretty handily win. But yeah, defeat now seems certain. The Galadhrim Veteran Warriors taking a lot of skirmish fire, now pinned in place by Heavy Goblin Infantry. Heavy Goblin Halberdiers are coming in to sort of reinforce what's left of that Goblin Infantry. Again, the Lothlorien Elves might still win down here. Mountain Orc Blades, balance of forces is evenly matched. Provided that skirmish fire can keep being poured into here, the Heavy Goblins should win. And indeed, seeing that, the Orc Bodyguards are going to try and commit to this area over here. They really need to wait until the Elder Council are done throwing their javelins, though. Because as you can see, the Elder Council have basically completely evaporated the Snow Trolls. But the Snow Trolls did their job. They basically cleaned up the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen and Spearmen that were over here. This has been a very intriguing fight over here to witness between Donald Kingslayer and Flaidmore. Some of the skirmish fire is now also being put onto the Elder Council, but most of it's missing. They should definitely just keep firing on the Galadhrim Veterans. Some of the Heavy Goblin Archers are now out of ammunition, which is kind of a bad sign, and they're being committed to melee to just try and hold back the tide. What are these Orc Bodyguards doing? Yep, they're moving forwards. Heavy Goblin Crossbows, what are they firing at? Are they still firing down there? They need to, because victory seems certain. Yes, they are. Good. Firing in here. Defeat is every time there's a volley, defeat is almost a certainty for the Lothlorien Elves, but when the volley stops, victory quickly switches back in favour of them. The Heavy Goblin Infantry and Mountain Orc Blades are just not of the quality that can hold these guys bottled up for long. So I do think Lothlorien are still going to just about take this fight up here, but what they're going to have left is not going to be a significant amount. Again, we're just going to quickly dive down here to see what's going on with Eriador. Eriador have committed forward a unit of Bree Militia, but they have been met by Black Uruk Warband, and Black Uruk Warband will pretty handily beat Bree Militia. Again, these probing assaults are not really worth it. If you're not going to commit anything other than low tier units, you shouldn't really bother at all. But Eriador do still have a very healthy army in reserve. Ooh, actually. Banderbrass Archers, I assume they're out of ammunition. It's not really a big committee, a big committal there. Well, we shall see. We'll quickly check in on the Dwarves. Just at the right time as well, because the Heavy Goblin Halberdiers are broken. Oh, bloody hell. This settlement though. So yeah, the Dwarves are going to be attacking down here. This is where they might start to struggle, provided the crossbows are in position. Which I hope they will be. They shouldn't send forward those infantry on their own, they should just put them in front of the Halberdiers, bank up and wait for the Dwarves to come. Now let's see what is going on where most of the action is at right now. Heavy goblin archers that are out of ammunition are being committed to melee over here, so I assume that means the crossbows are the only units that still have ammunition left. And they're not really firing a huge volume of bolts at the moment, so a few of these men each time are going down. The halberdiers, the archers will at least help. There goes the goblin general. That could prove to be pretty significant, actually. Those elder councillor not firing, interestingly enough. But yeah, victory seems certain for the orc bodyguards because there are a lot of them. They were very unfortunate that their general died so quickly. And they are the orcs, so the morale malus might be enough to send them routing earlier than Flaithmore would like. That could still be key. The balance of forces is evenly matched though. Again, it's going to. I think Lothlorien are going to win this fight in the north, but it's going to be at such a big cost to them. Will it be worth it in the long run? I think it will. I think that Flaithmore needed to win this fight up here and have a few units to reinforce his allies. Potentially maybe go right around and maybe surround the dwarves. But as it is, it's really going to be a case of the dwarves are going to be able to advance pretty swiftly into the settlement, I think. These crossbows are having to arc their shots a little bit. If they can like sort of reposition themselves a bit. Defeat is starting to look certain down here, interestingly enough. There aren't many Sindar Blade Masters left alive. Enough at the moment. If they can sort of get each unit down into the 10s, that's when they can safely sort of turn around maybe and try and reinforce their orc bodyguards. Sindar Blade Masters are a very good unit, despite not having hit points. They get work done. Those Galadrian veteran warriors, they never use their ammunition. They used a couple of volleys when they were in guard mode, but they were committed to melee. So that's really the best thing that Flaithmore has done. He's managed to rob Lothlorien essentially of their Galadrian veteran warriors. In my opinion, their finest unit. Still doesn't look like it's going to be enough for him to outright win on this front, but he's going to have made Lothlorien pay for every inch. And you've got to be feeling pretty good as a defender if you do that, especially when you're an army of goblins. Let's get in a little closer, shall we? See these halberdiers holding for as long as they possibly can. Their armour piercing is not going to be doing too much to the Lothlorien elves, but it's their ability to hold is what Flaithmore needs at the moment. You can see the crossbows coming in, killing a couple more Sindar archers. Every one of those lost is a bit of a tragedy for the attackers. Those heavy goblin archers don't really stand much of a chance in melee, but again, more chaff. And over there we can see there's some Mountain Uruk archers. So Tundra's Fox is reinforcing his ally with a unit of archers. Meanwhile, if we look down here, get in a little closer, the Orc Bodyguard's victory is a distinct possibility, but they're being made to pay for it. As soon as those Sindar Blade Masters have gone, the Elder Council will have what it takes in melee to break through over here. Elder Council, I've noticed, are not fantastic in melee for a unit with hit points, but it's still going to be enough to break through over here. Meanwhile, if we look down here, the Mountain Uruk archers are going to help against those Sindar archers. This is going to be the end for them. Oof. A real volume, a withering arrow storm now, and those Mountain Uruk archers could really be helpful at helping the Orc Bodyguard on this front. So Flaithmore might actually win with the addition of that skirmish unit. What a fight this has been so far. Again, on the other two, we'll have a look at what the other two choke points are doing in a moment, because I don't want to miss the outcome of this fight in particular. There's still a couple of Galadrian veterans in here, or Galathrim I should say. Really need to get into that habit. Bit of friendly fire, but it doesn't matter. At this point there are so few elves. The halberdiers have managed to pin them in place, so Flaithmore did a very good thing by advancing, sallying out, robbing Lothlorien of their skirmish power, and at this point it's looking like that decision could be what leads to a goblin victory here in the north. Sindar archers, only 7 of them left, only 3 Galathrim. Oh, there goes Haldir. Haldir is gone. Slain by skirmish fire. It's got to be some sort of dishonour for an elf to be slain in such a manner, right? Meanwhile, if we look over here, the Orc Bodyguard Defeat is now looking certain. The addition of the Elder Council to melee. It doesn't look, they're not actually in melee at the moment, they're just behind the melee engagement, it looks like. Actually no, some of them are in melee, I saw one of them die. Are they going to loose their javies? They need to do something. The Elder Council are really Lothlorien's hope here. Their defeat now seems certain. The Goblin Archers, Halberdiers and the Bodyguard, they're going to be sufficient to hold this line. And then, what are the Mountain Uruk Archers going to do? They're marching. I mean, if we look down here, there's only these... There's a few elves still left alive. Just sort of fighting to the last. What are these lads doing? Getting into a position. Again, they don't really want to fire over these goblins' heads. That'll be worth way more friendly fire. And every unit is necessary here. They could very well outright defeat Lothlorien. We shall see. Anyway, we'll have a look what's going on the other fronts, I think. Meanwhile, if we look over here, is that the crossbowman? It is. Firing into those Ironfoot warriors. It looks like he did commit a unit of heavy goblin infantry down here, which I'm not really sure I agree with. Again, he is firing his crossbows down here into these warriors and spears, so he is going to get quite a lot of casualties as they do this. And it is going to force the dwarves to commit forward some more serious units, but as soon as he does commit those serious units forwards, I'm not sure Char Char is going to have the units to deal with that. We'll have to wait and see. But I think they really needed to have a more comprehensive defence. Unknown, but it does look like over here there's no green triangles left. Victory belongs to the goblins down here against the elite units. Meanwhile, look back up here. Starting to get a little bit more difficult from a distance to see where some of these units are. Yeah, now the balance of forces is evenly matched. The bodyguards are still in here, but at this point the Sindar Blademasters and the Elder Council could be victorious over here. But now the heavy goblin crossbows and the Mountain Uruk Archers are going to start shooting them, I think. And that could well lead to Lothlorien's demise. Where are those Mountain Uruk Archers? They're on the way. Will they be in time? Again, the crossbows don't have the best angle here. Well, they do on these guys, but as soon as these guys are dead, and they're firing at the ones behind the halberds. What a fight this has been in the north. To a standstill. We'll go and check on Eriador, I think, after this, because it looks like they're finally starting to mount a more serious offensive. And you can see that the Elder Council, rightly very, very worried by the advance of the Mountain Uruk Archers. At this point, the Mountain Uruk Archers, if they want to just kite these Elder Council away, that will be all they need to do. Because the Sindar Blademasters on their own will be a good target for these heavy goblin crossbows. There goes one more. But in melee, the Sindar Blademasters are not going to be dislodged by the Orc Bodyguard. Meanwhile, if we look down here, yeah. Are they? I don't think they're fast enough to get away from the Elder Council, actually. Which is bad news for them. Yeah, they're not. Lothlorien, one of the things they have going for them is their speed. Although the way that units charge in this is kind of weird in the way that they sort of stop and then get into charge speed. Which kind of ruins Donald Kingslayer's plans here a little bit. Although the Mountain Uruk Archers did stop, so they are going to be forced to turn around and get into melee. What is this over here? Ah, what was left of the forces that were facing the Sindar Archers and the Galathran veteran warriors are now going to charge into the sides of the Elder Council. Going to try and finish these guys off. Getting rid of those javelins could be exactly what they need to do. I do like the shields of the Elder Council. They look very cool. Nice. Meanwhile, let's go and see what's going on up here. Starting to get a little choppy up here. You can see that heavy goblin halberdiers. Still, there's 20 of them left. It really depends on how much ammunition the crossbows have. If they have enough ammo to finish these Sindar Blademasters off, then victory will be the goblins. If not, though, Lothlorien could still turn this one around. Let's just quickly dive down here to see what Eriador are doing, because it looks like a more serious attack. And yes, they have sent forward some Forest Shell heavy archers, assuming they're out of ammo. Again, skirmishing through this narrow gap is not really what Eriador need to do. Forest Shell Heavy Spearmen and Archers just forming a front line, and Forest Shell Heavy Swords. Unfortunately for them though, while victory seems certain over the Heavy Goblin Spears, they will still be taking a decent amount of armor piercing based damage. Although Eriador's starting to really push there. Meanwhile, it looks like the Dwarves. You can see that the Goblins are really eager to keep them bottled up in this narrow part of the choke point as the crossbows do their work. They've done a number on these two units at least. Meanwhile, back to this fight, and over here, you see what I mean about the Elder Council not being fantastic in melee. They've got multiple HP, but unfortunately, even against just Mountain Archers and depleted Halberdiers, when they're outnumbered, they just don't seem to have the staying power. And that's why I rarely pick them, to be honest. I much prefer the Archers. Meanwhile, there are still Sindar Blademasters alive. They have largely defeated. There are 3 Orc bodyguards left. Heavy Goblins, crossbows still have missiles though, and that's really what's going to lead to the end of Lothlorien. There's not really a great deal of reinforcements from the main front to come from Flavemore though, to be fair. But this is a victory for the defenders nonetheless. Whether they have enough to stop the Dwarves and Eriador with their crossbows remains to be seen. These Sindar Blademasters, these Heavy Goblins, they really... yeah, they got another volley off. Yeah, brutal. Only one of them is surviving. He is going to get into melee though. Well, now he's not. Oh, shot in the crotch. That is grisly. Meanwhile, if we look down here, we shall see the final stand of Lothlorien. This fight has earned that much. What is left of the Elder Council being overwhelmed by Mountain Uruks and Goblins. An unceremonious end to the Elven push in this battle. The Misty Mountains have victory. So you underestimate the Misty Mountains at your peril. Your army is tiring. Yeah, no shit, you're dead. Right, let's go and have a look, shall we, at the Dwarven advance. Or what's left of it, to be fair. I mean, the Dwarves didn't have immediate reinforcements on hand to help with this. And so the initial wave of Ironfoot is going to be overwhelmed by basic Heavy Goblins. So that's a good move from Char Char. Meanwhile, we'll go and have a look at what Eriador is doing, because at this point it's looking like Eriador is the most likely place for a breakthrough for the attackers, and they do need a breakthrough here. Again, we're about halfway through this battle at this point, so there's still a lot of fight left to go. You can see that these Forest Shell units, they're not lightweight, they are pretty heavy duty. They're taking a few attritional casualties as they go through here, and the Spearmen... what is this that's firing at them? The Mountain Uruk Archers. Again, they're really eager to get through and engage the Mountain Uruk Archers in melee. The addition of Tundra's Fox's Mountain Uruk Archers were really clutch in the north. That was what turned that fight around and allowed the Misty Mountains to win that. We shall see if Flavemore's few units... I mean, he's still got crossbows, which presumably have a very low amount of ammunition. But still, one volley. If it comes down to a singular volley... Again, these Mountain Uruk Archers just firing. The Heavy Goblin... well, the forces of the Goblins need more forces over here now. Yeah, these Mountain Uruk Blades need to get right up into the face of these Forest Shell units that are breaking through. And indeed, those Mountain Uruk Pikes in the background are also being mobilised. Because these archers are going to be needed. They're going to need to inflict as much attrition on Eriador as they can, so that in the late game they really need to be focusing down those high tier Dwarven units. Which I still think those are going to be the key. Let's have a look at the well, we're around the halfway mark, and we have percentage of enemies killed is greater than percentage of allies killed. So the defenders have taken more casualties at this point. And then again, it is skewed somewhat by the fact that it is orcs versus orcs on the defense. So the traditional way of sort of measuring these battles is kind of skewed a little bit, but I would still say that the advantage rests in favour of the attackers. We move in here a little bit. As we see the Forest Shell Spearmen going toe-to-toe with the Mountain Uruk Blades. Mountain Uruk Blades are nothing really that special. Generally speaking, I pick the Heavy Goblin Infantry because they're cheaper. But they are nonetheless statistically better. So in a scenario, these guys are a little bit more worth it than the Heavy Goblin Infantry. Especially against Spearmen. Spearmen will not do a great deal of damage to them in return. But yeah, now it's going to turn in. It is a little bit more of an open fight over here than I thought. These Heavy Goblin Infantrymen are really struggling against the Forest Shell Heavy Swords. The pikemen are needed. They're needed urgently as well. These Mountain Uruk Archers, a little bit depleted. We have these Mountain Uruk Blades sort of charging into the sides of these spears. They're also taking shots in the back, so these Spearmen are the ones being focused down at the moment. They are a unit that is pretty good at holding the line. Over here we can see firing into the backs of those other Spearmen are the archers that managed to successfully retreat. Again, these Mountain Uruk Blades, they're going to overwhelm the Spearmen, so Eriador does need to get the second, well, whatever their next wave is, ready to be sent in. Otherwise this wave will have essentially died for nothing. And at this point, with the loss of Lothlorien, the attackers can't afford too many missteps. I still think the Dwarven strength is going to be enough to see them through. But even so, you're fighting the goblins on their home turf. Underestimate them at your peril. Well, they did actually manage to break through over here, but unfortunately for them, the pikes are here. And they're still taking shots in the back, and the pikes are going to be sufficient to hold these Eriador infantry units off a little longer while the archers do their work, and while the Mountain Uruk Blades cut through their fellows on the other side. They are pretty decently armoured though, so the pikes at least won't manage to kill them too quickly. I remember back when it was 0.86, I think, when the Mountain Uruk pikes were armour piercing. Crazy times. Cardinal and Royal Guard are being committed forward, it looks like. Eriador do need to send forward a pretty serious push if they want to get through here. This sort of piecemeal approach that Feyardon has sort of adopted here has not really paid off for him so far. There's Mountain Orc Berserkers waiting in the background over there. These Mountain Uruk Blades are going to be victorious, and then they're going to be able to engage the next Eriador wave. If they have elite Eriador units though, they will fall. So Battle Ready Dunedain will be very good against this unit indeed. Cardinal and Royal Guard will not do damage too quickly. Cardinal and Royal Guard are more defensive units. They do need to send forward something a little bit more serious, in my opinion. You can see the Cardinal and Royal Guard. I do like the Cardinal style, though. I like how it's not flashy, and I quite like that. Cardinal and Royal Guard charging in. They are, it says heavy infantry, but I do believe they're spearmen, based on how poorly I've seen them perform sometimes in the past. Nonetheless, with their sort of scale armour and chainmail. Still one of Cardinal, that would be their name in the next patch. Still one of Eriador's better infantry units, I should say. And these Mountain Uruk Blades defeat seems certain. There's still skirmish fire coming in, but now we have the Eriador pikemen. The Cardinal footmen are very good for what they are, for their price anyway. They're very cheap. You can have a lot of them, and it's a real strength of Eriador. I've actually come to appreciate Eriador a little more recently. These Forest Shell heavy swords are trying to charge past the pikes, but they're not really going to be able to go anywhere. I mean, back here you can see there's Black Uruks back here. I mean, they're going to die no matter what. I suppose they're just trying to recharge the pikes to get a few more kills before they die. As you can see, the gap is closing. And these Mountain Uruk Blades, they've managed to make a good go of this defense, although these Mountain Uruk Archers are now starting to fall away. The Mountain Orc Berserkers, I believe, are going to be pulled over here to help deal with the dwarves, question mark? Here we go. This fight over here has not moved at the moment. The Heavy Goblin Infantry still holding this pass successfully as well. The dwarves have not deigned to send forward another wave. And again, this lack of aggression from the attackers could cost them in the long run. We haven't seen Blackback Berserkers yet, but if they're present, that is something that can do a lot of damage to the high tier Dwarven infantry, which is still their ace in the hole. And if we look over here, we can see that it was Tundra's Fox and what's left of Flavemore's army, I guess. Sort of, just sort of going around, making life a little bit uncomfortable for the dwarves as they advance. Again, it's not really the most scary flanking force, but it is still there, and it does mean that the dwarves have to take note of it. this is a pretty fascinating fight so far. Be interesting to see how it plays out, but most of the action is going to be over here. You can see that the Cardolan Royal Guard victory is, well, they managed to trade evenly with a single unit of Mountain Uruk Blades, which means they're not really worth their price point. The one time I see Cardolan Royal Guard genuinely worth it is when they're backing up a unit of Cardolan Footmen. Meanwhile, if we go back over to the Dwarven front, it's not really going to move too much. I mean, unless they commit forward some of their stronger infantry units that can cut through the heavy goblin infantry pretty easily, I don't see how they're going to be able to muster the strength to get through here with just singular units of Ironfoot anymore, particularly with the crossbow units firing as they approach. Again, I can see why they would set up a defense for these guys, but honestly, oh, excuse me, we have archers over here, but the dwarves are better placed to deal with archers than most. There's Black Waltz over here, actually. It's an interesting unit. Didn't see them before from Eriador. Of course, they hide. There's more Eriador units coming over here as well with Cardolan Warband, but again, they're more of a... Cardolan Warband are a little bit more of a sort of anti-cavalry unit, primarily, which is... It's not really going to be too useful in this situation, obviously, but they also... Their melee stats are not fantastic. They're pretty good when they support another unit, though, I've noticed. Despite their seemingly very low stats, I don't think they count as halberds. I might be wrong about that. Regardless, here we can see that Eriador's push is largely coming to nothing at this point. You can see that the Forestshell Gatekeepers are sort of on the horizon, so if they feel the need to use them... Although over here the battle-ready Dunedain is being shot in the side, which is a bit of a shame for them, because the battle-ready Dunedain, of course, going to be one of the key units for Eriador at this point, because they're going to need to get into the softer parts of the Misty Mountains army and really deal with them. Battle-ready Dunedain, of course, one of those classic units from Vanilla, still looking as good as ever. And they will be an Eriador-only unit next patch. Arnor, or Arthedain as they will be known then, will be losing access to them, because of course they have the dismounted Arthedain Knights, which perform essentially the same sort of service, only they have, instead of 2 hit points, they have much better armour than the battle-ready Dunedain, which ironically means in this situation they would be much better, because they would stand up to the skirmish fire a little better. Meanwhile, we have a pike-to-pike engagement over here, as I was expecting to see a little more of, to be honest with you, but I'm glad I didn't, because that obviously turns the fight into a little bit more of a slog than is necessary most of the time. But we have the Mountain Uruk pikes going up against the Cardolan Warband. I do like the Cardolan Warband in open play. If you're 1v1ing as Eriador, it's actually very, very difficult to break down Eriador, especially as a Cav faction if they've got a whole bunch of Cardolan Footmen and their Forestshell Gatekeepers. It turns them into a bit of a force to be reckoned with, although against infantry-heavy factions and archer-heavy factions in particular, they tend to melt pretty fast. So, even so, over here, Eriador, I think they see the danger of the situation they're in, and they have committed forward their Forestshell Captains, their most elite unit, and they're also firing their Gatekeepers into these Mountain Uruk Blades. They are trying to get through this defence as quickly as they possibly can, and I can't say I blame them for that. Eriador... You know, they're not really known for their higher tier infantry units, but the Forestshell Captains are genuinely a very good infantry unit. They pale in comparison really to the Haven Guard and the Sons of Argonath, which they will always be compared against. But even so, it's just to be mentioned alongside those two is something worth saying. While it looks in the background over there like the Misty Mountains, sending forward more Mountain Uruk Blades just to try and hold this line. Also, the Cave Trolls are on their way, which is not really the sort of thing Eriador would want to see coming on this front. Still a few Cardolan Royal Guards. There's also some more Heavy Goblin Spears being committed. And I think that the Misty Mountains, they're committing over here because they do smell blood. They think they can take out Eriador as well, and if they can just focus all of what they have left on the dwarves, the defenders might have a chance at this one. We're coming into the sort of the final 20,000 frames of this fight. We shall see how this goes. Again, there are a few Mountain Uruk archers in melee over here. Nothing more than chaff is going to be offered by them. The Black Uruks of the mountains, though, could be the final hammer blow that sends the battle-ready Dunedain fleeing. And meanwhile over here, probably the wrong time to bring the Cave Trolls forward, if I'm honest. I would have waited until the gatekeepers were out of ammunition, although a rear charge into those battle ready, again, look at that, just utter devastation from the Forest Shell gatekeepers. I thought maybe the cave trolls were going to try and charge into the gatekeepers, but in the end they ended up rear charging the battle ready Dunedain, which did kill a solid 15 or so of them. There's more Mountaineer pikes. There's Flavemore's heavy goblin crossbowman. So there's the reinforcements. Will they be key? Well, we'll find out, because this is where all the action is now. The dwarves are not committing just yet. Oof. Forest Shell gatekeepers firing in. Those cave trolls are going to make it though into melee with them. They will lose, of course, because they've taken such a high amount of damage, but just trying to sort of distract them for a little bit will be the thing here. Then over here we have some black Uruks of the mountains. Those heavy goblin crossbowmen firing into the sides. Oh, the gatekeepers are so ruthless, scything down those black Uruks. Oh, but yeah, this is the Eriador weapon. The gatekeepers could well turn this fight around, although those Forest Shell captains taking some fire from what is left of Flavemore's crossbow ammunition. That will be the Forest Shell captains being the price for Lothlorien's loss could be a significant one as the fight goes on. Because of course now Eriador, really the only higher tier unit they have left are those Black Wolds. And they aren't really known for their staying power. They're known for their aggression and quick damage. Not unlike the Blackback Berserkers. Not as good as the Blackback Berserkers of course, but still. The gatekeepers are being engaged in melee now by the Black Uruks, and they need to follow this through the Misty Mountains. They need to reinforce quickly, because these Black Uruks will not last on their own. They need more. Mountain Uruk blades. Again, 1-to-1 they won't beat the Forest Shell captains, but the support of that depleted crossbow unit could be enough to see the Forest Shell blades really having trouble. There's more heavy goblin crossbowmen from Tundra's Fox, so yeah, they're very eager to finish off Eriador, and that's the price for the Dwarven passivity at the minute. They're moving forward now, but it could be too late. They could have waited too long. Again, if all of the attackers attacked all at once, the defenders would have buckled, because there's too much just heavy goblins for them to deal with that. Instead, it's beginning to look like maybe the defenders could turn this around and pull this off. There's still a lot of high-tier Dwarven units to come now. Sending forward the Khazad Orc Hunters into melee first is not really going to be the hammer blow that Eriador needs the dwarves to be at this point in order for them to save their army. Against heavy goblins, though, they should still do a decent amount of damage, but they will be held back. And again, it's a case of this canyon is where the dwarves are being held once more. It's the kind of warfare they like, but they need to be more proactive here. Otherwise, they're going to lose their second ally. And over here we can see the Black Uruks of the mountains. They're going to lose to the gatekeepers, but the gatekeepers are now taking some crossbow fire of their own by the looks of things. Oh no, it's just Mountain Uruk archer fire, but even so. And we can see back here these Cardalan elders. So this is where the general is. Oh. Jesus, come on. There we go. Just take a cheeky screenshot there as well, just in case. The Cardalan elders, of course, very good archer unit. Something which the attackers are honestly going to need. They're going to need to skirmish down the Misty Mountain positions in here, because at the moment Eriador have made it furthest into Goblin Town, and they've basically not made it past the first sort of entrance area. And over here, the battle-ready Dunedain and the Cardalan footmen, they're being worn down. And again, these heavy goblin crossbows still firing into the sides of the Forest Shell captains. It's not in great volume, but it's still enough to just chip away at this very elite unit. And in the long run, it might prove to be, that Lothlorien loss might prove to be the key. Although up here we can see that the Blackwolds and the Cardalan Warband are moving around in a sort of flanking manoeuvre. There's two units that go very well together actually. And all that's really blocking them here is Flavemore's very depleted infantry force, which will be very quickly dealt with by the Blackwolds in particular. So this is going to be It's going to be interesting to see. Interesting to behold. And over there, Forest Shell Gatekeepers. The Cardinal Elders are now also firing. They're actually firing into a position where it could be enough to turn the fight. Well, actually, no, they've lost too many battle ready Dunedain. But the Pikemen being focused down by the Cardinal Elders. We'll see how well that, you know, the Misty Mountains are going to be pretty bloodied on this front, and there's not going to be a great deal left over to help fight the Dwarves. I don't know, I mean, the Dwarves are going to have to fight their way through essentially one choke point. The Forest Shell Captains have managed to break through, though, so Eriador might still be okay. Despite the fact the crossbows have been firing at them, they're still in action, still fighting. Eriador doing their best to make the, well, they're making the best of a bad situation over here, to be honest with you. Their army's not going to look too pretty after this, but the Forest Shell Captains could ensure that at least some of it managed to make it into the interior of Goblin Town proper. We'll just have to wait and see. Mountaineeric Archers. Again, these Forest Shell Captains just cleaving their way through that unit. These heavy Goblin crossbows are going to need to get ready. But over here, what's left of the battle-ready Dunedain and the Cardinal Footmen have largely been defeated. So Eriador's army looking worse for wear. And again, some of these Forest Shell heavy archers just getting cut down. Less chaff for the attackers to use, which they may very well need in the late run. Late run? Late game. The long run is the right word for that. Meanwhile, if we look over here, the Dwarven push, the Khazad Orc Hunters, victory still seems certain despite the fact they're going up against Halberdiers. Might be due to the skirmish support they're receiving, which I assume is from Crossbowman. Yes, it is. So now the Dwarven power is going to start to show itself, I think. I think the Dwarves, with how healthy they still are. The Goblins have done really very well against Lothlorien and Eriador, but the Dwarves with that high tier infantry are always going to be the primary threat, in my opinion. And that may very well come to pass here in the late game. Who could have thought the Goblins were capable of such a valiant defence? Well, if we look over here, Mountaineeric Archers. They've got a unit of heavy Goblin Spears blocking the way. And a unit of depleted Mountaineeric Archers. And they're also going to retreat what's left of Flavemore's army to try and hold back this flanking force from Eriador, which could well prove to be pretty decisive. These Halberdiers, I think, are just going to sort of... They're going to actually move up to this position here. So yeah, the Cardinal Warband and the Black Wolds charging forth. Where are the Black Wolds? They haven't revealed themselves yet. Oh, they're still back. They need to get forward quickly. Otherwise these Cardinal Warband could find themselves taking a few more casualties than they would like. Again, the Cardinal Warband are a unit I really like the look of. Cardinal as a style are a little bit more... You know, they share more in common with Rudauer than they do with Arthedain. And of course the three realms of Arnor in their entirety will be in the next patch. Here comes the Archer Fire, which will be especially effective against both the Cardinal Warband and the Black Wolds. Victory still seems certain because again they are up against Flavemore's very depleted forces. If we look in here, yeah, the defenders are falling behind too much at this point. Even with the good work they did, I think this battle was always going to be beyond them. Come on, there we go. Primarily because of the Dwarven army. The Dwarven army is just simply too elite. I mean, they've not even committed forward any of their elite units yet, and they're already sort of scything their way through. So far, the only thing they've put into melee are their Khazad Orc Hunters and their Ironfoots, and now just arriving are the Khazad Warriors. Again, not really... At this point, the Dwarves should just commit everything and punch through and finish the job, as it were. What have we got over here? Blacker. Yeah, the Goblins just simply didn't have enough high tier units to deal with it. Here in the interior, I mean, back here we got what bodyguards from Char Char. There are the Blackback Berserkers. I mean, the percentages are still just too far apart. And over here, in the end, Eriador were victorious, although actually, Mountain Orc Berserkers being sent in to just sort of hold back their army a little bit more. Getting into melee against the Cardinal and Elders. Defeat seems certain after a pretty vicious charge. That should stabilise into victory being certain for the Cardinal Elders, especially when they've got support from that crossbow. But also the Orc bodyguards are coming over here, so still, even in spite of all of this, they're still eager to make it so that Eriador don't leave this battle, and 2 out of 3 armies wouldn't be bad for the defenders. 3 Misty Mountains armies putting up a good show. The gatekeepers need to pay more attention because those Orc bodyguards are coming in fast. Forest Shell Captain's defeat now seems certain for them. The damage those crossbows did might well prove to be vital. Here comes the Orc bodyguards, charging into the Forest Shell Gatekeepers, and this will be it. They won't be able to escape this time. This is going to be the end for them. The Orc bodyguards, or well, Goblin bodyguards, I guess. Oh, look at that. Point blank shot and he survived. A headshot and he lived. But yeah, this is going to be the end of Eriador's southern assault. Their northern assault might go a little better. Those Blackwolds might be enough to push them through. But it's really the Dwarves where they don't really have much of an answer to that, to be honest. The Cardinal Elders wield dual daggers in melee, which is pretty cool.
Our ally lies dead.
There goes the Eriador General.
They may lose heart and flee.
Don't know who the Eriador General is. He's just sort of a generic unit model. But yeah, these Cardinal Elders, they're actually not doing too well against armor-piercing units, so I guess against those dismounted Royal Guards of Rohan, it was more of a case of them being good against spear units. Against very attack-minded units, they'll fall apart pretty quickly. These Mountain Orc Berserkers, taking on both Forest Shell Captains and Cardinal Elders, and not doing a bad job at all. And pretty soon, they're starting to blend into the bodies now, but pretty soon they will be reinforced by a full complement of Orc bodyguards. And we shall see how that goes. Balance of forces is still relatively even, but it's a 10% between them. Meanwhile, if we look over here, we can see that the price that the Blackwolds paid for hanging back is the fact that the Cardinal Warband are largely dead at this point. Then again, I still think the Blackwolds will be sufficient to push through over here because they are very, very strong on the attack. But even so, this is a perfectly good unit of Cardinal Warband that was essentially gutted due to a bit of mismanagement. I think that the attackers have made a few mismanagement calls. I think Donald Kingslayer played very well, but I think that Orange Firedon he's made a few micro mistakes, I think, or at least, well, macro, I guess, choosing when to commit your forces. The Dwarves, they sat back, but again, it's hard to argue. They really were the kingmakers in this fight. As soon as they committed themselves, it was always going to be difficult for the defenders to defend against a solid Dwarven push like this. And Brainy Smurf, despite being a little bit too passive for my tastes, it's looking like he is going to be why the attackers are going to win this. All of the Khazad units coming forward, forming a very effective front line, pushing back against these Black Uruks of the mountains, which are just not going to have enough. There's another unit of Mountain Orcs over here, which is doing a decent amount of damage, but really, if the defenders are going to have any chance at all, they need to consolidate their forces against the Dwarves, and I don't think they saved any crossbow ammo for them. Most unfortunate for them. Oh, they're Blackback Berserkers over here now as well, so Tundra's Fox. All that chanting. Well and truly going to finish off Eriador on the southern front. These Cardinal Elders trying their best to escape, but they're not really going to be able to do much good. I mean, they're going to be chased down and killed like dogs. And the Orc bodyguards are over here, what's left of the Mountain Orc Berserkers. Those reinforcements are going to be needed over against the Dwarves. Meanwhile, let's see what's going on up here. The Blackwolds, yeah, victory is a distinct possibility, but they're dying fast to that archer fire. This is really their kryptonite, because in sustained melee on the attack, they really are very damaging, but they have no armor at all. Very low defense values. The only thing they have in their favor defensively is the fact they have 2 hit points. But it's not going to be enough, I don't think. The Goblins are going to win on the northern front against Eriador as well, it looks like. Provided the archers have enough ammo to keep up this fire on the Blackwolds. If they run out, then Eriador will be able to break through over here. My. Then over here, Cardinal and Elders just being charged down by the Blackbacks. It's not looking good. Heavy Goblin crossbows still have ammunition. They're being sort of targeted a little bit. But now, here comes Here comes the units that will really make a difference. Axemen of Erebor, Erebor infantry, and the Ironfoot halberdiers. I don't think the goblins have got an answer to a sustained dwarven push like this. It would be one of the most miraculous comebacks I've seen. I mean, they are pulling the percentages in bit by bit, but it's a little bit too late, I think. There's also Ironfoot Guard on the front line there with their black shields. Over here, the dwarves, now that they're fully committing, the goblin position is starting to buckle. But they will receive some reinforcements from some blackbacks and a unit of orc bodyguards in a moment, so maybe not all is lost. And in the north, of course, the Misty Mountains look like they're going to win as well. Despite all of these victories and all of this good play that the defenders have done in this battle, it really is starting to look like, oh dear, yeah, they're not going to win in the north after all. The Mountain Oak archers ran out of ammo, had to be committed to melee. And now the Black Wolves are going to be able to tear their way ever so slowly but ever so surely through this goblin position. They are all quite bloodied up though, but just a flanking charge at this point from the attackers is going to be enough to deal with them fully. So this is it. This is where the battle will be decided. We're coming into the final 10,000 frames shortly, and I can't see the attackers losing this at this point with all of that elite dwarven, all of those elite dwarven units. The Black Wolves are going to be able to get in behind the defenders and do some interference. Even with these crossbow bolts flying in, stuff like the Erebor infantry is going to just be too strong. And as soon as they commit forward, the Mithril Guard, the goblins badly need reinforcements on this front line. It doesn't look like it's going to be forthcoming, unfortunately. Here comes the other unit of Mountain Orc Berserkers, going to charge in, reinforce the line. Again, against skirmish fire, they're going to melt. They're just not designed for that. They have no armour at all. Similar in many ways in looks to the Black Wolves, I guess. Only they don't have hit points. That skull on their head. It looks kind of goofy. Orc bodyguards are in position now. Char committing forward his general, presumably, but it's not going to be enough to hold back the dwarves for too long. They need more serious reinforcements. Those crossbows are really letting the dwarves have it as they advance, but it's just not going to be enough to stop them, I don't think. They need reinforcements pretty bad. The Cardlin Elders were chased down and destroyed. Flavemore's army is still intact, kind of. He still has this depleted unit of crossbows, which still have ammunition by the looks of things. Where did those Blackback Berserkers go? Well, there are the Orc bodyguards. The Blackback Berserkers are kind of needed. We shall see. Erebor infantry, I mean, they've managed to stabilise this front line, so I guess they can save the Blackbacks for a more serious unit. You can see in the background there, Dunedain Rangers that are out of ammo have pulled out their swords, coming forward to join the melee. These Erebor infantry are going to be really difficult to dislodge along with the Ironfoot Guard. This is the sort of fight that the dwarves love to be a part of. And it's just going to... I'm rooting for the defenders. But I don't think... there's a Blackback Berserker. Here they come. That should be enough to turn around this front line. Even with the halberdiers there, although there is a gap now. A gap which the Dunedain Rangers are looking to exploit. Trying to get into those crossbows, and that really will be game over. So Fired On might be here with the final play of the game, which will be significant. Unless the Orcs have got some sort of force that they can very quickly send to intercept these Rangers and deal with them. It's not looking good for these crossbowmen. They're trying to run, but it's not going to do them any good. Tundra's Fox's Orc bodyguard is going to be committed, which is exactly the sort of unit they need. But really, they need these crossbows on the front line. Let's have a look here. They're pulling it back, the defenders. They really are. I don't think it's going to be enough, though. Defeat is almost a certainty. These Blackback Berserkers
The enemy force remains.
chewing up the Dwarven front line, but there's another whole wave to come, and I think by then the Blackback Berserkers will have taken enough attritional damage that it won't really matter. Let's go and have a look at what the Black Wolves are doing, shall we? No, not what the roof is doing. Come on, game. Work with me here. Here we go. So yeah, the Black Wolds, there's still 59 of them left. They've taken very little losses ever since the archers stopped firing. There is a unit coming in here as the Black Berserkers. Tundra's Fox is not eager for this to turn into a flanking force, and the Black Berserkers will be enough to deal with a unit of depleted and wounded Black Wolds. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look down here at the front line. There's still some Ironfoot crossbows that are firing their missiles point blank.
Behold how our cowardly foe runs. It's time to press the attack.
That, I believe, will be Flavemore. Yeah, because his unit's routed because of the Dunedain Rangers. These crossbows need to get back into position. But yeah, Flavemore is gone. He put up a good show. He got some kills on every single attacking army. Here come the Mithril Guard.
Our men have slain the enemy general.
There goes one of the Goblin generals on the front lines. I think that was Char-Char's general. Not the sort of thing the Orcs need. They need that morale to stay high. You can see in the background there. This is it, yeah, Sons of Durin, Mithril Guard, Blacklock Engineers, Sons of the Fallen. It's going to be too much. I think the Dwarves have got too many of their elite units, to be fair. I think when you look at the Dwarven hyper tier units, especially if they're on the attack, they should definitely only have 2 of them, not 4. Because of course they do have those Dwarven noblemen still to commit as well. But the Goblins have put up a valiant showing. A defence of their home that will go down in the ages. Again, Tundra's Fox's Orc Bodyguard is ready to be committed, and it will make life a little bit more difficult for the Dwarves on the advance. A very depleted unit of Mountain Orc Berserkers coming in. What are these Rangers doing? These Rangers are being a real pain for the defenders at this point. They do need to deal with them. They're going to get a rear charge on their defences. So I might have, fired on, did the right thing there, definitely. Use those Rangers to good effect. Might be the thing that just is the final nail in the defender's coffin. And there are the Orc Bodyguards just charging in. It's not going to be enough though. They're going to be... Those crossbows are still firing, so the Dwarves are still going to take a few more attritional casualties as they try and force their way through. The crossbows definitely need to be going after something like the Sons of Durin, because 1-to-1 they will massacre the Mountain Orc Berserkers. Meanwhile over here we can see that victory very, very easily was the Black Berserkers, and now they need to turn around and quickly get into the fight against the Dwarves, along with whatever is left of the forces that were over here anyway. I do like the interior of Goblin Town. Again, we mostly sort of fought around the periphery, but still. Here we have the Orc Bodyguards combining their strength to try and just hold back the Dwarves, waiting for that one extra unit of Black Berserkers to try and make life just that little bit more tricky as the Orcs try and advance. Those crossbows that still have ammunition. Here come the Dwarven Noblemen and the Sons of the Fallen. Yeah. The Dwarves, I think, too many hyper tier units. Pretty imbalanced. Because I think the defenders deserved to win this fight, to be honest with you. The way they diffused Lothlorien and the way that they dealt with Eriador, that is the sort of thing you do as the defenders, and you should expect to win a fight. The way that Lothlorien was essentially stonewalled, the way that Eriador was carved apart. For the defenders it must be quite frustrating to then see a Dwarven army full of all of these like hyper elite tier units. That's just gonna... There's nothing you can do. There genuinely is nothing to do. And here we can see the Sons of the Fallen just ignoring the defences and just managing to get into the heavy Goblin crossbows, and that's really going to be the end. And we can see that we're into the 5,500 frames, essentially. The Goblins, it's going to be a case of how many Dwarves can they kill. And I don't think it's going to be all that many, to be honest with you. The Black Berserkers might do alright, but everything else, we can see the Black Watch Legionnaires, no, not the Black Watch Legionnaires, the Black Lock Engineers pulling out their little hammers, getting into melee. They're a decent infantry unit as well, which is good, because, to be honest, at range, a little bit lackluster with how little ammunition they have, while the regular crossbows get a ton more. Here we can see the Orc Bodyguards taking fire from the crossbow bolts, and casualties from the front from the Sons of Durin. Tundra's Fox's general is the only one still left alive, I believe. We can see if we can try and find him, actually. He is the one without a helmet. It's like a really morbid game of Where's Waldo. Let's have a look. No, I can't find him. Just skimming over. You can see the Mithril Guard, Dwarven noblemen, the dwarves fully committed at this point, but again, why not? There's not really much that the defenders can do at this point. The Sons of the Fallen just chasing down the crossbowman. And the Dunedain Rangers also doing the same thing. There's still 9 of them remaining. If Fëanor had managed to do that with the rest of his army, then this would have been a walkover. So I'm glad that the defenders managed to sort of bisect his army, because it made it more interesting. Here we can see the Blackback Berserkers. They're going to try and take on the Sons of the Fallen. That's a fight that the Blackback Berserkers should probably win, actually, based on the Sons of the Fallen being spearmen. But it's not going to be enough. Even so, here is the town centre, the Goblin King's abode. But he's going to be slain by the dwarves. We're getting a little closer here. We can see the Blackback Berserkers' victory seems certain. Defeat seems certain. So the Sons of the Fallen are going to lose this fight, but again, it doesn't really matter too much. You can see the balance of power is rapidly starting to shift now that the dwarves are starting to really bring the hammer down. Orcish bodyguards. And here are the Dwarven noblemen. Yeah, there's nothing left but high tier dwarves at this point. Not something that depleted orc bodyguards have the ability to deal with, unfortunately for them. It's been a very fascinating game, though. Again, we'll talk about some of the ins and outs when the battle is fully concluded. We can see over here that these heavy goblin crossbowmen, unfortunately these rangers are still in melee with them, which means that they're not going to be able to shoot and support those Blackback Berserkers. At this point it's more of a sort of gesture of a last stand than it is anything particularly... It's not really going to turn the battle around at this point. Crossbows are good, but there are only 27 of them left alive. These rangers are doing a pretty good job at dealing with them. Meanwhile over here, you can see the clash of the Titans is underway.
Our men have slain the enemy.
There goes Tundra's Fox's general, at the hands of a Mithril Guard. But now, actually the Sons of the Fallen are going to win. Their defense and their staying power is just going to be too much. Even 1-to-1 against a unit like Blackback Berserkers, but it doesn't really matter too much because the Dwarven noblemen are on their way. King Dane himself is going to come to deliver the death blow to the defenders, it seems. There's still 4,000 frames. What is this down here? There's a red triangle. Oh, that's just routing units. Fair enough. They don't seem to be moving very quickly though. Here we are. Heavy Goblin Crossbowman. Still just being poked to death. They are actually firing their bolts. It would be rather unfortunate if Dane were to die in this sort of last act of heroism. Blackback Berserkers with their rusted, barbed swords, going toe to toe with the Sons of the Fallen. I believe that all of the defenders have been wiped out over here. Yes, they have. The dwarves have victory here, which means that all that is left is to take the centre of Goblin Town. The Blackback Berserkers and the crossbowmen are all that remains for the defenders. That's quite a quite a large amount of frames for the defenders to be occupied. Well, to be occupying the attackers, especially with how elite they are. There's Dane with his magnificent pink armour, getting up into... Well, he's actually in a pretty dangerous position, going up against these Blackback Berserkers. It seems like he's just sort of deciding, you know what, I'm going to stay and fight these Blackback Berserkers, I'm not going to bother with the crossbows. I want a real challenge. And he's the only general left alive on the field, so it'd be interesting to see if he dies to this or not. Well, he's managing to get kills. managing to bloody his warhammer at least. With the assistance of some of his kinsmen. Now he's leaving to sort of help take on the crossbows. A few individual Blackback Mountain berserkers. The crossbows, there's no escape for them now. In fact, they're all dead. So that is that, and this is it, the final stand. The final stand of the Blackback Mountain berserkers, the best of the Misty Mountains units. They deserve better than to be shot to death anyway. A rear charge from the Dwarven noblemen would suffice. Let's get in a little closer, and this will be it. This will be where we end the battle. Again, the Blackback Berserkers with their natty looking armour. It's the same unit model, I believe, that the Bolg's Champions use when they're mounted. Or it's at least similar to the Bolg's Champions and the Gundabad Guard. This sort of very natty looking, rough orc armour. Although I hesitate to call it armour because the Blackback Berserkers, of course, don't have an awful lot of armour. Nonetheless, we'll speed it up a little bit because the Blackback Berserkers don't go down too easy. Indeed, the Sons of the Fallen look like they're going to lose this fight, actually. Indeed, there are only 14 of them, so the Sons of the Fallen would lose 1-to-1 with the Blackback Berserkers, but with the Dwarven noblemen here, the Blackback Berserkers are not long for this world. Where are all the other Dwarven units? Confused as to why they haven't sent forward a few more, but yes. The attackers are going to have victory, Goblin Town is going to fall, and the Goblin King, no doubt, slain. There are the Sons of Durin. They're the Dwarven unit, I think, which 1-to-1 can pretty easily stomp the Blackback Berserkers into the dirt. They are an exceptionally strong unit. More crossbow bolts. Dane is going to live. The one general left alive. Unless he gets friendly fired by his own crossbows, which would be very unfortunate indeed. Here come the Blackback Engineers. So yeah, this is it. The final flourish. Oof.
This is a
brutal.
clear victory.
Clear? It could have been we who lost here today. But yeah, here we go. I think, honestly, the Dwarves need to have less hyper-tier units, because I do think the Defenders deserved to win that one. I think that the way that they dealt with Lothlorien and Eriador was exactly how you need to go about doing it, and the fact that they weren't then able to put up a defence against the Dwarves because of all of that high-tier units makes the scenario a bit imbalanced. Nonetheless, it was still very fun to watch. That fight in the north with Lothlorien between Flavemore and Donald Kingslayer was very fun to watch indeed. The way that Eriador went about business could have been a little better, and they ended up paying for it. But ultimately it didn't matter because the Dwarven army was simply too strong. Ooh. Let's have a look at the stats for this Eriador army. Well, no, not this Eriador army. This Lothlorien army. Sindar Blade Masters, 631 kills. No, not Sindar Blade Masters, Sindar Archers. So you can see that the Lothlorien army performed very well. They essentially completely destroyed an entire Goblin army, with the exception of like 2 very depleted units. So yeah, interesting. 317 for the Galathrim veteran riders. It's the veteran warriors with only 166. That was where I think Lothlorien lost the northern fight. The way that Flavemore was able to pin them, surround them, and shoot them to death with crossbow fire. But yeah, this was a very fun one. It was a very long 3v3 as well, and it's a better representation of Goblin Town than the last time I showed it, I believe. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this Horton scenario, and I hope you'll join me for the next one, where I think I'll show a free-for-all. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for that.